Have you heard the ones with David Bowie and Freddie Mercury on Pressure?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
5.1 on Dark Side of the Moon was fantastic. It's of course not a stem, but just looking at the individual tracks, it's just spectacular how it was mixed.
Yeah, I would be so down if some major artist like that would, sell me. I would be happy to pay for stems, in order to just analyze them.
Yeah.
If Hang on, back up a step. Dark Side wasn't recorded in 5.1. It was quadraphonic.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. We are, if you're in YouTube and you see a little link down below, you can join us here in Zoom. If you're here in Zoom and you're wondering how all these folks became panelists, they got here early. They had good audio, video, and internet. We open by 6. Usually we're opening now a little earlier than 6, but I can't promise anything at that point. You don't have to join then to become a panelist. You need to be here by 6:40. Between 6:40 and 6:43, we will hand out the Discord link. That's where you can join our other conversation that happens between all of these, and you can be ready for mic checks. So once you start the mic checks, the panel is closed. We're not going to add anybody else to the show. So be here by 6:40 to make sure that you can get your space here, and we would love to have you. This is a panel that constantly is breathing. New people come in. Some people come back after a long period of time, after their trek there, and so there's a lot of kind of moving around. But this panel represents, as I said, centuries of experience between all of us, and so there's a real great opportunity to from lots of different areas to be part of. So if you're interested, get here early. At 7 o'clock, we start general Q&A. So general Q&A is when we just answer your questions. Now, this is Thanksgiving week in the United States. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do Q&A the whole time. We usually have specific hours of things, but because there's a lot of people moving around and a lot of people disconnected and everything else, we're going to go ahead and just stick with general Q&A for the week. But generally we have second hours that we'll jump back into a week from today. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. If you want to share this with other people, you can share this link. I'm going to put it in Makana. Don't share your own link, otherwise people will come in as you, which is not nearly as good. So, I mean, it's good to have one of you, but not many of you. That's the thing we're trying to avoid. All right, Bill, do we have some questions stacking up here?
We certainly do. And in fact, A. Mitchels is going to start us off with one of the deepest, most philosophical questions I have seen in a long time. Why do most cables come in 3-foot lengths instead of 5, 10, or 25? You can find 3 foot, 6 foot, 9 foot. Is there a real engineering reason, or is it just the metric empire trying to conquer the universe? Even many cables marked as other lengths are actually base 3. So a 10-foot mic line is actually 9, 25s are 24, and so forth. Discuss.
Such a conundrum. Does anyone have any theories here? Courtney and then Stuart.
I think it is the metric influence. So that way they can just create one length of cable and label it differently in different countries. It's one.
And
meter,
they figure the Americans won't realize that they got shorted by a foot when they bought their 10-foot cable. They'll be like, well, it's close enough.
It won't quite reach the rack.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be 10 feet. John and then Stuart.
Yeah, I was going to go with, I do believe the metric system is also the culprit here, but I've noticed also that whenever I buy a 12-inch cable, it's often 18 inches. So I just think that the people that are cutting the cables aren't being very precise in general.
I'm sure that they're being precise. I mean, rarely do I get like the same cables from the same manufacturer and have them be different. I mean, there's definitely, they've decided what that length is going to be. And they make it that length. So I don't think that it changes that much.
It's a king's foot.
Yeah, there you go. Stuart?
Come to the metric side. We have cookies. But also, no reputable cable manufacturer will ever sell a cable that is shorter than the length that's listed on the box. So all cables are slightly longer, just so they don't get sued.
All right, go ahead, Jason.
There's a big difference between precise and accurate. They're always going to be the same length, relative to themselves. I have found that some manufacturers will terminate the cable and then put the end on it. And then the difference is, somewhat negligible, but not really sometimes, depending, especially with the really short ones.
Mine are all pretty much what they say they are because I make them. So like I think that it's yeah. So go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, my mind in terms of when it comes to sound works in threes as well, just because of the 3 dB rule. When it comes to sound, 3 dB is like twice as loud or half as loud. And my mind just works that way, threes and threes.
Yep. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just if we want to go deep dive, we could talk about the signal propagation down the length of the cable and how different lengths affect that. But the only time the only time that the lengths need to be exactly the same is if you're using such a quad SDI setup, where then they have to be the exact same length, especially on raw transport.
But the question is it any different if you're using English or metric? That's what we all want to know.
Only the distance to the digital cliff.
Metric cables, metric audio cables sound better.
Yeah. So what's funny is for us, I think it was most of our cables were 3, 6, and then they went 10, 15, 25. It was like there was like the 3 and 6 foot cables. Then it was 10, 15, 25, 50, 100 and there was some 75s floating around here and there, but that seemed to be the lengths in our building. That's what they all kind of hammered out. And the big thing is that the 3s and the 6s would hang from we have these little teeth that you put at the top of either our racks or on the walls, and the 6 foot ones you'll hang, and 6 foot and less you hang, and then everything else you roll. So that was kind of the other bit of it makes it nicer to work with them I wish I could hang the 25s because then they'd be nicer to work with, but over under. John and then Bill.
Aren't most of the cable manufacturers in metric countries anyway? So it makes sense that they would standardize on metric.
No idea. Bill?
I just always get annoyed because I'm often putting in installations like my desk where I'm looking for a 1 foot or a 2 foot or something like that. And it seems like those are the hardest things to find, short lengths. And I know I could go in and take the time to custom build them, but I have a 6-inch thing and 6-inch cable would be perfect. Try finding it. It's really hard. I could find a 4-inch XLR male to female, but not a 6-inch. And that's what I needed. I
have a hard time finding quality ones that are short, so like we've got some USB-Cs recently for cameras. We wanted to hook some little drives to the cameras, and we bought a bunch of these really short USB-Cs. It turns out their transfer speed was like 30 megs a second. The drive is 900 megs a second, and so I guess they so we went back to longer cables that are more reliable. Go ahead, Kev, and then we'll move on.
I was just simply going to say metric over here. It's simply 1, 3, 5, and 10 meters, and that's kind of the generic you could get anywhere. It's quite straightforward, but yeah, finding that 1 and 5 meters could be difficult.
Yep. Next question. Here.
Moving on to Eric Hall of Mount Vernon, Washington, who says, what would be a good mic setup for a piano student studying via Zoom? The student has a grand piano.
Just waiting for Jeff to raise his hand. I wasn't going to rush Jeff, but I was like, okay, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
It depends a lot on the room that he's in. One thing, I'm going to actually go to something else.
It's a barn.
It's a barn.
It's a barn.
Okay. If it's a fairly decent acoustic, and how much money do they have? What's your budget? I love a pair of spaced AB Omnis on grand piano if you have a nice space to be in them. But if you're studying and you want to do Zoom lessons, a really important thing is to have a separate talk mic. So you're going to need a mixer that can handle 3 channels with a mute button to turn that talk mic on and off, because speaking to your instructor is very important during a lesson, and your mics that are on the piano are not going to allow you to do that.
Okay, but you're recommending 2 mics on the grand for is that what
stereo always, yes. A stereo pair.
Okay, so a mixer, a talk mic, can you get away with just 1 mic on the grand? It's just really about the instructor being able to get some quality feedback.
I'd love to see 2.
he's gonna hold the line.
So a mixer that can mix 3 mics. Then.
Yeah, a little USB, a little analog mixer with a USB output into Zoom.
I mean, literally, it's a little Behringer. Would probably do it. Yep, Grant.
I've had success with a boundary mic, so I really like the Audio Technica boundary mics. You can sit them, you could sit that just in the side with the lid up, and that would work as a talk mic as well. The other thing I like with miking a Grand is even just a SM57 right on the bottom of it. I tend to do it if I'm double miking, and so I do something on the top, get some brightness, and I get some fullness with the 57 underneath the Grand. Can work on a loud stage as well. That's where it works. But for that sort of zoom, I'd go with a boundary mic. Be perfect.
I just want to see a picture of a grand piano in a barn. Like I just want photos, or it doesn't exist. Go ahead, Mickey.
Okay, I'll have him send one.
Okay, great.
Yeah, to Jeff's point about aside from sending a feed of the actual piano, the need for a talkback, like a dialogue microphone. Since it's a grand piano, I would actually not have the lid up. Like, I know everyone loves the sound of a full stick on a grand piano. I would have it closed so that you minimize the bleed going into the mic that is meant for the speech, for the dialogue. And yeah, like what?
Yeah, I don't know that that's concurrent.
Sorry.
I don't think the speaking and the playing is going to be concurrent. I mean, happening at the same time.
I think since it's a lesson, there may be a lot of instances wherein, like, say the teacher says, okay, like, do this chord, and then like they're talking back and forth as they're trying out different chords and all that. So like I wouldn't. It would be hard to plan for that. Is how I would put it. So yeah, I would try to either way try to minimize the bleed. I mean, in this instance, perfect like fidelity and acoustics isn't really the goal. It's more of having good, discourse between the teacher and the student. And yeah, same with what was suggested earlier. Two omnis is what I would suggest. But if you had to stick to one, I would go with a cardioid placed near the lower strings, but placed near the higher strings, but with the pickup pointed towards the lower strings. Mic near the high, pickup pointed towards the lows.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then Bill, and then we'll go on.
Another option for the communication, which as you can see we're all mentioning is the most important part of the lesson, is to have a second Zoom device that could be just your talking. So it could be a phone or something like that, where you have a mute button that you can unmute to talk to your instructor and then mute that when you're playing the piano.
Oh, you could come into the meeting twice.
Correct.
Right? Oh, hey, that would be a good solution, and that would avoid the mixer.
Maybe. Still got two mics, or theoretically, but yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to note real quick, one of my good friends when my son was in high school was a piano tech with big time touring bands and shows. And the very first thing they did always was tear out the keyboard of the piano and put in a really good high quality velocity weighted electronic keyboard, because none of the acoustic pianos stay in tune as you're going city to city in trucks. So this is for acoustic performance. I know it's a whole different world.
The one thing I will say is that if there's any budget ever, I mean, like even for like a little mixer and so on and so forth, this gets back into the whole time versus money versus effort versus quality, is that if you can squeeze a little bit else out, a more enjoyable experience means you do it more fluidly and you do it more often, and it's just a better process for everyone. It doesn't feel like as much work. So
don't forget fun in your formula, Alex.
Yeah, it's more fun when things are good. And so the thing is that a lot of times people will jerry rig something that is just like this like weird little like thing that kind of works, and you spend half of your time trying to figure out how to make it work. And and it's just always an issue, and then it makes you not want to do it, or it makes the process not feel fun, or that type of thing. And so I think that we just always want to take that into account when it doesn't mean we should buy Neumann mics and sound devices, pickups for everything, but it means that just when you think about it, if it's a couple extra dollars or whatever, if you can save it up, it just the work that something takes to do can oftentimes reduce the often the effectiveness of it. So you just want to always keep that in mind. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Ray Franklin of Mount Dora. What audio should you monitor from the ATEM multiview monitor that I can't hear from computer one speaker? Did that make sense? What audio should you monitor from the ATEM multiview monitor that I can't hear from the computer one speaker?
I'm afraid I don't understand that question.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble parsing it too. Yeah. Anybody have a shot at it?
I think I got an idea of what they're trying to say. So in the ATEM Mini, you have your camera 1, your camera 2, your camera 3, your camera 4, plus mic 1 and mic 2, and then an overall. And I think they're trying to say which audio should I be listening to figure out which one. And I guess the answer is the one that's going to be on at the end. Normally what I do is I go through a mixer and then bring it all into mic 1 or 2 and then turn off all the camera audio. Some of you do camera audio on each camera. So ultimately there is no headphone out of the ATEM Mini, so you can't listen there for a monitor. And I don't think there's a way to split it up to listen to the individual audio tracks through the software.
Good, Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, in my setup, which looks like this, I monitor audio out of the mixer rather than out of the ATEM, because if you're feeding into the ATEM and then monitoring the ATEM's output, I don't think the ATEM will get USB return, or it will, but then you'll have to bring it back up somewhere by piping an additional video output out of your computer back into the ATEM to be able to monitor, and I think you'd get feedback. So I would always monitor off of a mixer off your computer for monitoring rather than the ATEM.
Next question.
Moving on to Eric Hall out of Mount Vernon, Washington. A. Mitchels helped me a lot to better understand the ATEM. I'm still fuzzy about how to record, get multi-view, and program out at the same time. He has an ATEM Mini ISO.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
You're not going to get both multi-view and program out in HDMI form. You're going to get multi-view out. Unless can anyone think of any way?
Yeah, that's what the bridge. You can use the bridge to get the program out, but it won't be. It'll be a little delayed. But the bridge was kind of designed for that, is to get you a program out or a program view. But you'd need another piece of hardware to do that. But
the bridge meaning another device.
No, the
right?
streaming bridge.
I have streaming one, bridge is another device. Yes.
Right. Of course, you couldn't encode while you're doing that, but yeah.
Right. So if you're recording ISOs, you could, or you're connecting it to the computer, you could, that's the good news about everything after the Mini, the Mini Pro and the Mini ISO both allow you to get the multi-view, but you still have to choose between the multi-view and the program.
Okay, so the multi-view stays with the HDMI out on the ATEM Mini, and then we're broadcasting to another device for the program.
To get program, but generally I wouldn't try that. I mean, I would just generally know that my program is going out of either my USB-C into my computer, or I'm streaming it out of my ATEM Mini. But I would be just using the multi-view for the program. Like, I wouldn't be trying to look. I personally wouldn't try to do something else, like hack a bunch of stuff together to watch it. If I'm using it in a Mini, I'm just looking at the multi-view, and one of the windows in the multi-view is my program. Go ahead, Jeff.
So Eric, you have 2 ports on there, an HDMI and USB, and each of those ports has 2 options. So the HDMI is either multi-view or program, but not both, one or the other. It can actually be any of the 4 ISOs as well. The USB is either a connection to your computer, which gives you program to things like Zoom as a webcam, or it's a connection to a USB-C drive, which gives you ISO recording, but it can't be both at the same time. So of the 3 things you're asking for, you get 2 of the 3. You have to add another device, this ATEM Streaming bridge, to pick up the other one via the Ethernet port. But again, that's probably more than you need.
And it's a little bit of
I want it all. I want it all, Jeff.
Yeah. So what they call that as a production HD switcher. like if you move up, like as soon as you move up to the next level of switcher, I mean, we're trying to, we want to get the smallest thing that we can buy, and then we want it to do all the things that the bigger ones do. The bigger ones do lots of things. So as you spend more money, you get a bigger switcher. It'll give you the multi-view and the program and all the other bits and pieces that you're looking for. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Brian.
Cough hack. vMix.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So to be clear, no way to simultaneously record ISOs and use the ATEM Mini as a webcam source.
That's correct.
Correct.
Unless you took the HDMI out and went into like a mini recorder or a, like you could take the HDMI out and put it through another device and put it back.
I think that's
Zoom.
what Victor is doing.
So yeah, you could either go ahead, Victor. That's what you're doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yep. Next question. Victor, you're really quiet. Next question.
Moving on to Gabriel Ung in Malaysia. With Black Friday and Cyber Monday around the corner, what software hardware that is discounted within this period would you recommend?
The one I think a lot of people have jumped on is the Facebook's Portal Mini, which is $68, I believe. But some people can't find it, and some people say they've already bought two. So I don't know what that. Anything else? Any other hardware or software that people are looking at? Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, watch Guitar Center and Musician's Friend. They just declared bankruptcy, and they can drop everything out the door right now. So.
Well, they what version of bankruptcy are they liquidating, or are they just restructuring?
They're in restructure. So if they just push it out the door, it's cash. So it gives them a chance in here to move it, just a lot of merchandise just to show cash. So it's just watch. If something you like is there, it's a good chance for prices there in the next 3 weeks.
Jeffrey?
Newer is doing a Black Friday week, and they've got a lot of really cool lights and other things. I just bought a camera slider for $100 off. So they're doing it all week.
Yep. Stuart?
Black Friday is a uniquely American thing that is spreading around the world, and I'm wondering, is BMD doing any sales of Resolve at a discount price? That would be kind of cool.
I think the deal on Resolve, they're selling it with a little piece of hardware now. Yeah, so that you get the free piece of hardware when you buy it. Go ahead, Jason, and then Grant.
Restream.io is always cheapest, at least for the last 2 consecutive years. Their largest sale is always Black Friday.
Yep. And go ahead, Grant, and then we'll move on.
I was going to say about the speed editor. I didn't know if it was a deal that they were doing, in that you buy the, I don't know, I think it was like, I don't know which one you're actually buying, and the other one comes free. But it was
exactly.
I don't know which one it is, but it does seem like a decent deal.
It's pretty good to get a piece of hardware for $300 and then have it. I mean, you buy any Blackmagic camera, of course, you get or not any camera, but I think any of the Ursa or Mini or Micro Cinemas or whatever, or not Micro, anyway, the BMCC.
The cinema cameras.
Yeah. So I now I had to buy a bunch of cameras, and so now I'm awash with Resolve licenses. Anyway, next question.
Moving on from Gabriel to Victor from the panel. He asks, for Brian Maddox, getting a Dante card soon for my X32. Any pitfalls I should watch out for as I start using it?
I don't have to raise my hand, right? Since he specifically
called you out. Yep.
So this actually is a pretty easy one to answer, because there is one major pitfall that is true of basically any Dante card you put into any digital mixing console. The big gotcha is you have to think of it in terms of the card is its own audio device, because it has a little Dante chip in there that is essentially a completely different thing. And it wants to clock to the Dante network. And now you're taking that and you're sticking it into a card slot in your mixing console, and your mixing console wants to clock to something. And the biggest mistake and I made this mistake, this is why I know, is you need to work that out. There's a couple different ways you can do it. One of the ways, in fact, my preference in most cases is as soon as I put a Dante card into an X32, I clock the console to the card. And then the card is clocked to the Dante network. The card essentially becomes the master for everything. You can also make the console the master, clock the card to the console, and then clock Dante to the card. But my preference typically is to clock everything off the card. But that's just an easy, because the problem is you'll plug it in and you'll get your Dante to work and it will work and everything will talk and there'll be sound coming out of everything, except every 5 to 15 seconds it'll click and you'll tear your hair out going, why is this clicking? Why is this not working? And it's inevitably it's the clocking between those two.
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, a follow up. So on my second computer where I'll be recording in Logic, is it simply that I just choose that Dante card as my audio interface in and out and just forget about the X Live card or the X32 card? Is that
exactly
the way I prevent things?
Because for all intents and purposes, it's replacing. Now, does your record computer have DVS or some sort of Dante interface on it?
No, but I will be getting something for Jeff Francis's recommendation. I have to buy some kind of software for it to see Dante, correct?
That's DVS,
yeah.
Dante Virtual Sound Card.
Yeah, and so that's and basically that then becomes your software Dante. The other thing to remember, sorry, but this is just a me preaching. Every time you use Dante, you really need a hardware device to clock it. Now you will have a hardware device because you have a card. And the card is a hardware device. Your DVS is a software Dante device. It will clock to that card. So that then again becomes the clock master for everything, and everything clocks to that. And then then it'll be seamless and easy. And when you want to add additional devices, it becomes very easy I want to add 14 computers and record them in different ways and play them back through different things. And now you're in Dante world and you can patch anything to anything and life is grand.
And the only thing I'll say is that beyond the computer and those pieces of hardware that it got us is just when you're putting in switches and routers, oftentimes dumber switches work better than smarter switches. Like you just really dumb, cheap ones work really good. And the smart ones oftentimes get too smart. The biggest thing you have to watch for is eco settings. You need to turn them all off, like turn every eco setting. That's for big corporations that are trying to shave off pennies off of their whatever. It is not good for Dante. And it has been like a thing that has tied us up for a day or a half a day trying to dig down, and it always comes out some switch somewhere has an eco setting on. So you're going to have to burn up expand your carbon footprint by half a pound a decade and turn that switch eco setting off. Go ahead, Jeff, and then Jason, and then Mickey.
I'll go beyond trying to outthink the switches, but trying to outthink networking. It's better to have a dumb operator sometimes. In the beginning of Dante, tried to manage IP addresses, and it's just better to let the network negotiate itself and just stay out of that, plug it in, it'll work. They will find their own correct addresses.
Awesome. I know where to find you, Jeff.
Jason and Mickey.
Yeah, +1 on using the card to clock to the console. It just makes sense because that's where your finished product is. So it doesn't really matter what the console thinks. That will solve so many problems. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So I'm so glad it was the first thing out of your mouth.
Mickey, and then Doug.
Yeah, Victor, I'm not sure if you're thinking of using your iMac Pro as the multi-track tape machine.
Exactly.
But there are a lot of reports of the built-in Ethernet port of the iMac Pro running very unstable for Dante networks. So a lot of people suggest getting an external USB gigabit Ethernet adapter for that. So that's one little intricacy with certain Mac models for some reason. And like as mentioned earlier, be picky with your switch if you are running through a switch, but if you're just going straight from the console and your computer, just do a straight line, minimize the complexity of switches, unless of course you're building a bigger. Okay.
No. I'll be going through a switch. Yeah, because
as mentioned earlier, turn off eco, and also you might need to enable IGMP snooping on your switch if you are running more complex systems.
Good, Doug.
Yeah, and +1 to what Jeff said, like I spent an hour on the phone with the Yamaha technician when I got my TF3, and because I was an IP, like, nope, that has to have IPs. He goes, my goal is for you to not ever call me again. So, so I did this thing. I unplugged it. I have a separate network. I have Cisco switches, like the guys in the chat are saying, and I tell you what, it has worked ever since. I have not had to call Yamaha back.
You know, it's every company's goal for you not to call them back. You know, like it's a you know, the we had a I think I said, I've told this before, I'll keep it really quick, but we worked with a company that basically took their top 20 questions that anybody has, you know, that people call in for as an appliance company. And they just told me it's $12 a call. It costs us $12 a call. You know, like that's their math, you know, is $12 a call. And this is, I don't know, 2 decades ago. But they just made a video of how to do the top 20 things. It cut their calls in half, you know, because it turned out that 90% of the calls were 20%. So there was some people still calling in, but it just massively, and it's something for manufacturers to think about, is just taking what people call about. I mean, most of these people have a record of it, and just make sure you're making videos. And I would be, if I was a company, I'd be making videos every month of whatever's left, you know, whatever the high things are, let's just throw up. You know, if I had that data, I'd probably do it as a service. you know, like it would just probably get a lot of YouTube views. You can tell which ones that are really popular. If you like Blackmagic, you do Blackmagic green screen. People are having these videos that aren't very easy to watch, but there's still 60,000 views of them because people are trying to figure it out. So anyway, next question.
Thank you all.
Moving on to Roger Miles of Lake Zurich, Illinois, who asks, what are the maximum gallery view sizes for Zoom on the various Facebook portals?
I bet you it's 25. Is it? You're showing 25, but I bet you it's 25. I bet you it doesn't go to 49.
I think it's switchable, because we're looking for one for my sister in San Francisco, and I was reading the specs, and I think the larger ones can do 24 or 48. The smaller ones, I think, are limited to 24.
Yep. I'd have to see it to believe it. Go ahead, Grant.
I was just going to, it's somewhat related, and I just wanted to say to Professor that I have tested now the if we can see here. Oh, sorry. The Zoom room with three screens, 147 gallery view is absolutely.
So you're able to put
true.
gallery view in all 3 screens.
Yes, and I've got a little video of this as well where you can change when you change the screens. It changes all 3 screens. So this room had 300 and something people in it, and so then once you changed, you had a completely different 147 people.
Thank you. And when you could theoretically pin 3 people as well.
Yes.
Into each screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's great fun. That's all I can say. It's just great fun.
Yeah. I mean, he's gone into calculation mode.
Well,
this could mean something for me right now.
We have a request to record like 20 people. And I was just kind of like, and they don't want all the stuff that we do. They just want the 20 people recorded. And I was just like 20, and so it's not, I was thinking that's a lot, but it's only 7 computers, like theoretically it's 7 computers that just are pinned to those screens. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, what you were saying, Alex, when somebody gives you a job that is like so a la carte, I'm thinking to myself, that's like when an enterprise approaches me and says, will you set up Google Workspace, but we don't want anything else. We don't want you to manage it. We don't, just turn it on. It's like, I don't know about that.
And for that one specifically, I mean, we're thinking about the cloud, just like that's where you kind of just put them all in, put rooms into the cloud and do that. I just have to still something. Grant, you would for 20 records?
As Guy has said, we still can't get rooms to work in the cloud.
Oh,
so there's something funky. It just won't even start the process. So you don't even see it come up anywhere. It just will not start. So I was going to ask them whether they're checking for something, but I mean, given that it doesn't even start, there's something weird. But of course, the standard meetings does work fine, and then you could get a completely clean raster out of that.
Yep.
And do a capture of that.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on, and we are now up to Tony Mobley of Often in the Panel and Newman, Georgia. Could the panel give an update on the ATEM Mini stands for cooling?
Didn't we lick that like quite a while ago? Somebody put it up on a 3D printing site, and anyone who wants it can just get it and
Courtney?
even pay
Yeah, it was Courtney.
Yeah,
Courtney.
Yeah, I put some little feet that I designed for it that just plug into the holes, the screw holes on the bottom of the ATEM, and they're on Thingiverse. Thingiverse. So just go to Thingiverse and search for ATEM Mini, and you'll find about 5 or 6 different stand options that you can 3D print. And mine have to be printed out of TPU, which is urethane, because they depend on the squishiness of the urethane to hold them in. But then they work pretty well. I have it on mine here.
Guy, and then Sky, Jason, John.
Yeah, we were going to outsource them to China and try to, make them really cheap by getting 1,000 or so, but we just couldn't pull it off because of the cost. So we're just printing them. We're having somebody print them, and we're bundling them now with the ATEMs so people can get them, because we've seen a lot of this overheating. So anybody who has an ATEM Mini, I really recommend even just taking a pencil or something and sticking it underneath to get
Can
that
I get a pair
underneath. They're on our website, dvstore.com, and you can click and buy.
Sky, and then Jason.
Well, Guy answered the question. I was going to try to step into that role, and that didn't happen. So it sounds like somebody did.
Good, Jason.
Awesome.
Having had and continuing to use all 3 ATEM Minis, I can tell you, if you are having heat problems, first, I've never had heat problems, but I would say start by turning down to 1080-30. If you don't need 1080-60, the amount of power and just cycles that saves is immense.
I have to admit, and I have been admittedly 1080-30 and not 1080-60. So I mean, obviously you should be able to use it for what it was designed for. So if that's part of that. I've had mine on for weeks and it doesn't have any. I mean, it's barely warm. So I'm not sure exactly, what is causing what configuration causes it, because I haven't experienced it. John Idelson, and then John Pewitt. Did you have your hand up?
I was just going to say, ordered from Guy. A couple of my friends have done that.
Yeah, there you go. And then Courtney, and then Bill, real quick.
Just going to say that I turned down the brightness on the LEDs. That helps quite a bit. I turned mine to 50%, and I still see them just fine. And I think it drops the temperature of the board quite a bit.
And it's easier on the eyes. John Pewitt. Maybe, sort of. There we go.
Sorry, cat in the way of my keyboard. I printed out these and they work very well. But before then, I took a trick from Andy Anako, and I have these metal.
Looks like a
machining
cheese plate.
Machinings. Yeah, they're
called a 3-2-1.
1-2-3 block or 3-2-1 block.
Yeah, and I put them underneath it, and it helped cool. It kept it cool. Plus the heat. I think the metal pulled away a lot of the heat. So just so you can get them on Amazon for about $20 for a pair.
Yep. Bill?
Just noting that they do have positive ventilation, so make sure that the right side, which is the air intake, is clear, and the left side, which is the air exhaust, is clear. You put your hand next to it, you can usually tell whether the air is functioning.
You can also get an air conditioner and then funnel it into the side of the thing, and you have this big old air, thing just kind of blowing into my
flex duct directly to your ATEM Mini.
Jeffrey, real quick.
Update the software. When I first got mine, it was clocking at 135 degrees, and then when I updated the software and firmware, it went right down to about 120, 115.
That's good. No, next question.
Moving on to Rick Coombs of Columbia, Tennessee, who asked, when trying to trim a 2-hour video in YouTube, it seems to take several hours to do this. Is this normal? Could this be that you have to keep your YouTube studio open in a browser and not close it? I'm only trimming the beginning of the program.
It's typical. It should take, we tell clients, it should take 2 or 3 hours, but we tell clients 4 to 6 hours just to manage their expectations. But clipping, it has to go into a queue. So it can be a little bit faster depending on what's doing, but it basically has to retranscode everything. So it's basic, it has to, on our end, you're just putting up a single video. On YouTube's end, all those resolutions that you see have to be regenerated inside of YouTube. So those aren't, it doesn't do the conversion 1080, 720, 540, 360, 240. Those are the 5 layers, and possibly 4K on top of that, the 6 layers. It's not doing that on the fly. When you make that change in YouTube, there's another version of it that it's accessing. That's because you're actually getting it as HLS. You're getting an adaptive bit stream that is being delivered to you. And so when you make that little edit, it's not just editing the video and then saving it. It is setting that endpoint and then putting it into a queue and then recompressing everything all the way through the entire piece. And especially if something 2 hours, it has to recompress all of that. And it's doing it, and you're not the only one using the resources. And so it's depending on the day and the demand and everything else, it's how it's distributed. And so that's why it takes so long. And it's totally normal. You don't have to leave the window open, and it won't go any faster. And probably in a very long time, because it just, if someone gave me the file and said, can we just trim off the front, it would take me longer than it takes YouTube. Jason and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, just to echo what Alex was saying, YouTube Studio is one of the worst APIs on one of the best CDNs in the entire world. Like,
I will say
just how it is.
It's gotten better. It definitely has gotten better. It used to be much worse. The edit tools are much better than they used to be. What I will say is I still generally don't edit the end. So there are times when if you edit the end of it still occurs for me every once in a while that if you edit the end, it'll move if you edit the end point, it'll move the start point. So what I do is I just try to have a clean close, and then I just cut the front off. Who cares about what's at the end? If you have a still that happens to sit there for 2 minutes, it doesn't really matter. So I do pay attention to making sure that I have a clean ending. But I don't, if you look at the percentages of people who actually watch the ending, you wouldn't worry about it either. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, 2 hours. You're hitting that edge of what you can trim into.
No, you can trim
video.
Just so you know, you could trim. I think you can trim the 4.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. Wait, no, I'm thinking about trimming for keeping the video versus trimming for creating a new video. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But the other thing is, it is a pretty long video, and I do believe that they put it into a separate queue from somebody that's trying to trim a 15-minute video. Yep. So it's going to definitely be a longer queue.
And it is a little. YouTube is not precise about a lot of those things. I've trimmed 8-hour videos, trimmed the head off of them. And just out of curiosity, like, I don't think this should work, but I'm going to try it anyway. And then I've had other ones that are 4 hours and that won't trim. So it just, once you get to 4 hours, you're really in the outer limits of it. But it's good to know that you can trim the head, and you probably should. Anyway, next question.
All right. And I'm moving out Rick Combs, who I mispronounced probably because I had just read Denise Lahat Coons, who is from Jerusalem, who has our next question. And Denise says, does multi-spotlight from Zoom meetings to live stream in YouTube work?
Well, I believe it does. If you multi-spotlight to YouTube, and Mickey could probably test this right now. So, Mickey can test a couple of these and, set us up with a couple there, and then we can wait for 20 seconds and see what it looks like on YouTube. Let's see if I jump to live. I believe that it should work just fine. So if I'm actually watching it, but we got 2 of them. And
we do motion patterns to see if everything?
No.
Yeah, I remember when this feature first came out, it wasn't doing it, but I don't know now.
Work. Yeah. So it only was 1, but I think that maybe it's still stuck to 1. We'll see here. I believe that you hit Bill pretty quickly after me, and it's still only, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember like
Alex.
the behavior back then when I multi-spotlight in Zoom is that what the stream does is it only goes between speaker view between those 2 people. So if like right now both of you are spotlighted, when say another person speaks, or like when I'm speaking right now, I shouldn't be popping up in that in the stream.
When I said that about waving my hands, yes, I'm watching the Zoom seconds later, and I became present, and then it came back.
I'm seeing myself now in the stream, so I guess
so it's switching.
So the answer is no.
No, I guess not.
We've now done a test. I thought it did. I thought we had looked at that in the past, but the answer is no. Multi-spotlight only works inside of Zoom. It's a good note for those of you using Zoom as a streaming tool, though it won't quite give you that function. Anyway, next question.
Moving on, we're at Brian Enright of New York City, who asks, has anyone on the panel used Descript for creating content?
I don't think so. I think Descript is the one that you can actually like edit the text and it'll kind of create it. You can cut it down, I believe. You know, you can just edit text with some stills and it'll do it. You don't have to do a lot of the video production, but I don't think anybody that I know is using it. I don't think we have a lot of useful things to say about it. Okay. It works like a dock. All right. Next question.
Moving on to Mike Henderson, who comes to us out of Colorado. And Mike asks, are there any beginner resources for shading and matching cameras using the ATEM Mini?
I don't know if there's any beginner resources. I really should. I know I need to get a camera matching video out because I was just showing it to some folks last week, and they were like, "Oh, that's way easier than the way I do it is way easier." I'll just say it that way. The way I do my camera matching, because it's a much simpler way to do it, and it doesn't require actually any scopes or anything else. It just so I have a color wheel. And you need a wheel or a square. Now, I happen to do it because I had a Dumont chart, and I have the little one I showed you before. I'll show you. Hold on. I have a little one with me. Oh, I'm all jacked up here. Hold on. I need to get wireless.
This, as I recall, if Alex is going to do the same demo, requires a circle wipe. And
yeah, a
lot of us say this is the only time you should ever use a circle wipe.
Yeah, the only time you should use a circle wipe or a square wipe. So this is what I prefer the larger Dumont chart, but the one I carry with me when I'm traveling is this little one here. So this is a very small color chart. And what I do is I do a circle wipe where I cut and in fact, I've actually started on the ATEMs on the Constellation. I'm going to correct myself. I actually use a square wipe even on this one. And I just cut the square on the inside. And the reason is that the circle wipe is soft. It's got a soft edge that we can't get rid of in the Constellation. I don't remember seeing that before, but when we brought it up, we saw a soft edge, and that makes this much harder, my technique. So we just cut a square in it, but you have to get the two cameras right next to each other, and you line this up perfectly so that, well, not perfectly, but as close as you can to the absolute same thing. Then I cut a square out of it. It might be easier if I do a video eventually, but I cut a square out so that the same colors are showing from the inside one is the camera I'm trying to match, and the outside one is the new camera. And if I see a line between those, if I see a change in the color, they're off. So then you go into your color and you just start pulling it together, and you can pull the other camera together. And when all the lines disappear, when I can't see, when it looks like it's the same image there, they're on. And you don't have to. There's no science to it. I mean, there's science to it because you got to figure out what strings to pull to get it there, but you don't have to have a scope or anything else. It's just visually you look at it. It's easier if you can solo your colors either on your monitor. On the monitor I can solo colors. But if you solo the blue, green, red, you can really see it. Like in black and white, you can totally see that you're on or off. And so you can tune all that back in, to make that work. And it's pretty fast, as far as doing that, and it's just a very simple process. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, for that soft circle wipe issue, would it be worth it to pre-prepare like a Luma key that you can just load in?
That's a good idea.
Maybe several versions at different diameters in case you have to.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't think of that. It's good.
I never thought of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I'll steal that.
Nice circle wipe, Jason.
Very good. All right. There you go. Jason's got the circle wipe down. All right. Next question.
And you can use circle wipe if you're doing the beginning, a takeoff on the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think that's allowed. We're moving on to Ricardo Hicks, who says, are there any unique advantages to using Zoom rooms as a tool in virtual event conference production? We're looking for some efficiencies in our process. And he's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hi, Ricardo.
So we only use Zoom rooms in our production at this point. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, there definitely is. There's a few different ones. The probably the biggest thing is being able to control what is happening on the screen without touching the screen, without using your mouse on it at all. And so you can use the remote control app on a tablet, and they've also added a web view of that. So from the control, from the Zoom web, you can open a browser view of that control, and now you can, remotely control the Zoom room, which means pinning, spotlighting, gallery view, all of that. So I have that 3 monitor setup that you saw with the gallery view. Once a meeting started a screen share, for example, I can say where that sits, on which screen that's sitting, and then I can have gallery view and active speaker view. And so of those 3, with one Zoom room, I've got these 3 very clean feeds coming in that I can control. And so it's perfect in a virtual event environment.
Yeah, I mean, what we're only using 2 screens out per computer, but I think we're getting ready to move to 3, just because why not? You got 3 available to you. And the big thing is that having those 3 outputs, I mean, the only thing that I would add is I just wish Zoom would add a deck link support, so that we could push, pure video out of something. In a perfect world, they would do a deck link, they'd support multiple deck link outputs, like an 8K or Duo, so that you could just push all of those out as SDI, because we have to convert them still to SDI on our end, to put them into a proper system. But those are small things. It's still better than everything else. I will say that the ability recently that when we started moving into the idea that we could take we've always wrestled with the idea that, someone wants to show their PowerPoint presentation or something else. We've always had this thing like, well, are we going to do it, or are they going to do it? And how are we going to get it back and forth? And the Zoom solution of one screen is them at 1080 and the other screen is their screen is magical. From our perspective, because now we can just switch back and forth. We can set up picture in picture. We can do, whatever we want to do. We can do all of that stuff on our end. At that point, I went from, the Zooms and we've been using Zoom rooms exclusively for the last 4 or 5 months. Like we started, if you look back, you'll see I'm experimenting with Zoom rooms now. I don't even consider using anything else. And the reason we had it is because we had some pinning issues with the business license, where the pin was dropping. But we went to Zoom rooms, and then you just keep on adding more feature sets to the Zoom room, and it just is way better than, if you're doing professional level virtual events into video production, the Zoom room is the right solution. And I wouldn't use anything else at this point. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one of the other cool things is that you could turn on auto answer. And so that's unique, instead of just a client, which if you called it, somebody would have to be on the other side to pick it up. So you could literally put one of these remotely and have a PTZ camera.
Don't you need they need a password, right, to do the auto answer now? You can't do auto answer without a password now. I think you have to. It's like
I'm not sure on that. The way I do it is it's on our account. So yeah. So I'll do invite my Zoom room. So I could ship a laptop across the country, have the person just connected to the internet, and then I can activate that thing now and have a nice PTZ camera, and I can control that camera remotely from then on out. And from there, I could then hook that into the HD SDI or HDMI out of that camera into something with a better codec and be controlling a camera remotely. So for virtual production, think of it that way. You've got the real time of WebRTC with the Zoom client, the Zoom room being able to send, in 200 milliseconds. But then you can have a nicer SRT or YouTube stream that you have control of that camera. So auto answer on the Zoom room is something really worth exploring if you're doing a lot of this stuff, because you could have 5 Zoom rooms all across the country and be controlling all of them without an operator.
No, and the one thing that hasn't been as successful for me is the Zoom room, I don't think, can control the remote camera. Can you control the remote camera from the Zoom room itself? You have to do it. Oh, you could.
Pan, tilt, and zoom. Yeah. And then depending on the camera, you can do much more if you can IP into it.
Right. For some reason, I think we were having trouble finding those controls, but they must be there. They're there. They're in those Zoom room.
Yeah, they're
controls.
absolutely there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next, go ahead, Grant.
I was just going to add, now that they've added breakout rooms as well, it's kind of changed my world. So it's really amazing that the whole breakout room thing that I'm doing with green rooms and stages and all that, I'm now able to do with Zoom rooms, and that's super cool. So now I've got multiple Zoom rooms and in multiple breakout rooms, and yeah, you can do some very, very cool things with it. I've also messed around with the SSH. You can do some command line control. So I have played with with pinning and spotlighting, with my goal being that you could do control multiple rooms with one command. Haven't quite got there, but there is some pretty cool scripting that you can do.
Next, go ahead, Victor.
Just real quick, Grant, is there any way on a regular Zoom call to be able to spotlight or pin from some kind of a network command or a something that I can send out from QLab and have it do that?
So I haven't played with it yet, but there's a few people that are using the SDK, and they've created their own. Essentially, they've created their own client that then you can control things. So there's an app I've downloaded. I just haven't tried it yet, where it can you join the meeting and you make it the host, and now you can do all those features from a separate app. So I don't know if Guy's showing something there now, but
yeah, if you have a link to it, please let me know.
This is just if you get digging into the back end, you can turn on lights, projectors, you open and close curtains. It's just with modules. But this
that's
is the
other way
end
around,
using...
though. That's
okay.
Control from the Zoom room to something else. But Victor's asking to be able to do something to control the Zoom room.
Right, through OSC or some kind of a network command.
There is and that reminds me, there is a Zoom OSC, and so which is that. Basically, someone's taken the SDK and they've wrapped it and then made some controls, and so that's worth looking at because that would work perfectly with QLab.
Thank you so much.
Next question.
We're up to Mike Keating, who's asking from Burlington, Ontario, a question about ATEM Streaming Bridge. I have a 20 megabyte per second upload connection, and the far end has a 900 megabit download. At streaming medium, it's only pushing about 4 to 5 megabits a second, but frequently dropping frames. Any ideas?
Stuart and then Jason.
Start by looking at the quality of service settings on your local router. After that, see what else on your own system is using your bandwidth, because it's got to have a consistent bandwidth apportioned to your outgoing stream, and anything that loads in the background that dials home, like different software and what have you, will eat into that a little bit. So you want to try and minimize any of those. Same with Windows or Mac OS doing updates in the background.
Go ahead, Jason.
Stuart, whatever your look is, it's really working right now. That look is great.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, where to start there? So the quality setting that you see on an ATEM or basically any encoder is an average, right? If you were to flick in extremely complicated pixels, and vary them by frame, the encoder is going to have to guess, and its goal is to hit that average. Your sustained up and down isn't really your indicator here, and
well, I think that's a variable bit rate. I think a lot of times that the RTMP, I don't know. I mean, it may be a constant bit rate that it's sending out. I mean, typically when you're sending RTMP, what you want to try to do is send it CBR. I mean, you're not going to, the variable, you're right, the variable bit rate exists, but I think that typically on the stream, on this point to point, we'd have to look at it, but I'd be surprised if they were doing a VBR to the between the two.
You're right. Now that you mention it, I haven't tested that, but ATEM Minis love to vary it.
Yeah. Okay.
And that doesn't matter regardless of the host. I'd say DNS and ports, like Stuart said.
This is why a lot of us were hoping for SRT instead of RTMP too. It's some error correction to add a little bit of latency, but be able to do some error correction to get all the bits from one place to the other would be great. So, but when you ask about why we want SRT or Zixi, that's why. And you can, again, you can start adding layers to this, like a Zixi wrapper that you could theoretically use with this if you wanted to, but that would mean you're not really using the stream, the streaming bridge anymore. Next question.
Frequent questioner Gabriel Ong out of Malaysia has one for us today. Question related to power cords. Do you purchase or manufacture your own power extension cords? How would you calculate the power required and if regular extension cords are sufficient?
Now, I will say power cords are something that I don't make myself. Go ahead, Stuart. I stay away from that.
power cords affect your insurance. If you screw them up and burn things down, your insurance company will go, did you buy this? Was it tested and tagged? Or do we have to no longer honor your contract for insurance? There are safety standards on those printed down the sides of them. Go and buy some. It's so much simpler. And I say that as somebody who is qualified to make them. Also, get them tested and tagged on a regular basis so that you can work anywhere where you need that tagging to be on set.
Mickey?
Yeah, for me, like if it's less than say 20 meters, shorter than 20 meters and less than 15 amps, yeah, just buy. But if you need longer runs and higher amperage going through those cables, then that's when I would build my own. But definitely look at the rating of each cord, and not only the cord, of course, but also the plugs and the jacks on each end.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a set rate, but I'm sure that there's somewhere to calculate this, but you do want to pay attention to the gauge of the wire and how long the run is. So you not all 100-foot extension cords or 30-meter extension cords or whatever are made the same. You'll notice that some are really thick and some are really thin, and the thin ones are they're not really built to take the full amperage all the way out that length. They're adding resistance, which will get not necessarily work. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, in America, the organization is Underwriters Laboratory, and we have all seen thousands and thousands of little hard-to-tear off Underwriters Laboratory tags. It's probably a good idea if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff to maybe leave those on and don't cut them off, just to make sure. And I'm sure there are standards just like that for most of the other countries.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Tony Mobley out of Newman, Georgia. Have the panel members considered AirPods Pro for production use? I know we are not fans of Bluetooth.
The one place I use them is if I'm testing an Atmos, something in an Atmos, and I don't have anything else to test it with. I can get some sense of direction with them. You'll see the funny thing that I'm noticing now is that when I pop stuff up that might be Atmos, you'll see me go like this. I'll turn my head back and forth because I'm trying to figure out whether the positional data is working or not. And so there's like this weird, and a bunch of us have talked about it now that are working in Atmos stuff, is that there's this weird new thing that we do where you pick something up and you go, oh, this is cool. And you go like this, and then you go, oh, it's just stereo. Like it's just, like it's, you want to, you're like immediately check it, for surround or not. Bill, and then Jeffrey, and then Grant.
I'll just note that I think their first and foremost use cases for people who are listening to music and get telephone calls through an iPhone or something like that. So the microphones on them are not full range. They're like most telephonic microphones. They really value clarity over full bandwidth. So I wouldn't try to use them as a substitute for a real mic in any kind of recording circumstance.
Go Jeffrey and then Grant.
The funny thing is between an AirPod Pro and somebody using the microphone off the laptop, most of the time I tell them to switch over to the microphone off the laptop. As for ears, it just doesn't. It sounds like you're coming from a radio. For my ears, what I use is the FIIL series, which is like vastly less expensive. I still don't use it as the microphone. I use it to hear. So you can have that, and then you can kind of work with the microphone a little bit because you're not dealing with that echo cancellation from the speakers from the laptop or desktop.
Good, Grant.
Yeah, my experience is a little different to that. With all the remote guests that we bring in, where it's just whatever they have in their house. Whenever someone brings out AirPods, I'm always very happy. They have never failed on a show for me. The only thing that may happen is that they swap them. We say don't use both of them. Have one charged and swap them over as they go flat. But they work awesome. And I know we wouldn't normally rely on Bluetooth, but I've not had a problem with it. Touch wood.
Good, Mike, and then Courtney, and then we'll move on. Oh, and then Brian.
Yeah. So all the AirPods I think are going to be better than whatever you're getting out of your phone. I think Filmic Pro allows you to switch the microphones over. So if you're shooting videos and you're doing any kind of narration, you've got AirPods in your ears and you switch the microphone over those, it's still going to sound way better than the phone. That's what I got it. So
good, Courtney.
Yeah, I've seen so many online long shows or something where a panel participation where they're using AirPods, and somewhere about an hour into the show, we lose a person because their batteries go dead.
Good.
To charge them. So the using one ear at a time is a good solution.
Yeah.
Make sure the other one's on charge.
Yep, Brian.
Yeah, I'm just going to second Grant. I think that so many of these things, people end up using their laptop microphones, and all I hear is a giant room and nastiness. And our AirPod Pros, my first choice? No, they're my second to last choice for what I want people to use. But typically, what most people are using is their laptop microphone, which is my last choice. So AirPod Pros also work remarkably well for IP-based intercom systems. So for any of the Agent IC things, I was amazed. Like, it's the only consumer headphone thing that I don't hate. They actually work remarkably well in like canceling out background noise. But no, they don't sound great.
Yep. Sky, real quick.
And well, just the delineation between the Pro and the standard ones. Grant, Brian.
They're a lot better. The Pro's got better mic, sounds
Much
better.
better.
Yeah, much better. I mean, I have both of them, and I kind of interchange them a little bit because of if one ran out of battery or whatever, I still have my old ones, and it's just like it's rough. I mean, the new AirPods were amazing, and the new AirPods are much more amazing.
The pros are even.
They're
amazing.
Way over it. Yeah,
that's the answer. Moving on.
Yeah,
there is a comfort thing though as well. Like I think that I find the older ones I can just wear all day, and the newer ones inside your ear can be just a little more uncomfortable. I find.
And I think I've been using in-ear for so long that for me, I can just put them in. I'll forget that. I'll literally have it in there for hours until I get the little doo-doo, because I just forget that it's in there. So anyway, next question.
Moving on, Jeff Francis of the panel in Columbia, South Carolina, queries us with YouTube streaming. What can cause this error? Quote, your encoder is sending data faster than real time, multiple seconds of video each second. You must rate limit your live video upload to approximately 1 second of video each second.
Extron streaming hardware, 5 megabits per second. Seems to be streaming fine. It's actually running right now.
And it does that always?
No. We run it daily, and probably I've seen this, 1 or 2 times over the past month.
It sounds like it's varying. It's just I don't think it's going a lot over. It sounds like it's like getting behind and then pushing forward to get all the frames back in. So you're probably seeing it goes to like 31 or 32 frames a second. Depending on, it might be how it manages that process of, I can get the rest of the frames in. And then YouTube's like, like that's not what I was expecting. I'd be curious to find out if you set YouTube to 60 frames a second, if you ever saw it, but you wouldn't want to do that in a normal stream. The only time you want to use 60 is for sports or gaming. There's no reason to use 60 otherwise, just a waste of bandwidth. My guess is that the Extron is trying to catch up. It's lost a couple frames and it puts them in, and it's just a little over 30. And it's just and some of those error messages that you get, because your stream doesn't stop, right? You just get flagged.
Yeah, stream seems fine.
Yeah. YouTube, one of the problems with YouTube is it gives you a bunch of error messages of things it doesn't like. Like you put up a still for a long time, it's like, I'm not getting enough bandwidth, and then you put something else up, and so you do want to always go back and refer to the stream itself to make sure that it's breaking up, because YouTube, sometimes those are good indicators and you should pay attention to them, but sometimes they're just there's things I wish it would pay more attention to related to that, but I think that's probably just like a couple frames extra that the Extron's putting in because it had dropped some frames somewhere else. Go ahead, Jason, and then we'll move on.
This is a colossally stupid fix, but it might work because I've seen it work before in other in larger organizations. Be sure that NTP or network time protocol is unified all the way across your network.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Mike Henderson of Colorado, who asks, when shading cameras with the ATEM Mini, it takes over manual control of the camera. Is there a way to hand that control back to the camera? And he's using a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K.
What do you think to choose? Like I don't think you can hand it back to the operator. It's really
I
like,
haven't found a way yet. Once it grabs the
Yeah.
camera, it seems like it just sticks there.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
The only way I could think to do it might be with the app and Bluetooth. There's an iPad app, and then there's a third party called Bluetooth Plus for the iPhone that does a spectacular job. And by the way, now supports multiple cameras, which is way cool.
Next question.
Moving on to Mark Harder from Brooklyn. For each Zoom room, you're paying the $49 a month fee. Are you paying the $49 a month fee, or is it or is that fee to use Zoom rooms without limit?
No, it's just one. It's for each Zoom room. It's $49 a month. So it's a professional solution for a professional problem. So that's the cost of having the extra features there that you have. So yeah, you're definitely paying for each room. Like for instance, right now we don't have as many events scheduled. We're kind of in a rebuild after we had tons and tons of events. The end of the year, we have a couple big events that don't need the equipment. So we just turned them all off. Like we have a room that we're using for testing and, a couple other licenses, but we just kind of turned everything down. So we're saving a lot of money because we had 14 of them. So, but we kind of, now we're down to one, but the day before I need to do another event or before I need to start testing for another event, I just go up and turn it back on again. So it's something that you don't have to leave on if you're not using them. Go ahead, Grant.
It's one of the rare times that I get to, one up Alex. He said he's 14, 18.
Yeah, I know.
Rooms.
Grant.
I raise you 180 rooms is what we have at the moment. So that's our
exactly.
That's our account.
That's
and
great.
once you go to the corporate like that, that corporate enterprise level, we're on a plan that it just includes meetings at 1,000, webinar at 1,000, and rooms at 300, and that's included in the one license, and then we've got 180 of them. And so it's really cool when you get to that, because you kind of just have everything. It's all just all you can eat type of thing. We have heard also that there is some per minute charging that we're looking into. And I'm sure it only works for some particular applications, but that's intriguing to us for some of our events. Noted not our Tony Robbins events, because he just goes for like 16 hours a day, and a bunch of like it would just, per minute charging would not be good for us on that.
Right.
You notice how casually he tossed off. We have 180 of them.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It gives you a sense of scale. Go ahead, John Edelson. And we'll move on.
Grant, how do you name them?
Yeah, actually, so in that 180 is licenses, but we actually, I created and scripted it so that we had 1,000. We've got 1,000 users, and the trick that I did is that we used a domain with Google, like the whatever it is, G Suite, whatever it is, and then we used the plus trick, and so all the users are Zoom plus 001. Zoom plus 002, and so they all actually tie back to one physical email account, but there is actually 1,000 aliases essentially, all coming back to that one account. It works really well.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
Very good. All right, next question.
Moving on to Kyle Hammond of Chicago, who says, I'm looking for free apps for both PC and Mac that I can use to adjust color temperature on webcams. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, I saw this question earlier. I found that there's one called Wondershare Filmora 9. It's available for Mac and iOS. It's free to try. I'll put the link to Meccano for you. But that seems the only one I found that seems to address the question.
Okay.
I want to raise my hand in this because I had trouble, and I don't know whether it's still there, but Wondershare for me has always been in my category for this reason. They have a kind of a sticky try it out for free, and I had trouble getting their software off my machine once it was in place. So I'm a little leery of them. That may have changed. I don't want to, color a company's reputation unless it's deserved.
I think you're right, Bill, looking at their website. There's the
Yeah,
ones that
that's
keep us
I
sticky
call
on
that
this.
fishhook subscription-y kind of stuff. They try to get into your system and then it's hard to get them out.
Yeah, Bill, I had the same exact experience with them. I was going to say the same thing. It's kind of like questionware, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Stuart?
Yeah, just on the PC side of this one, check out the website for your manufacturer of your laptop, because I'm assuming it's a laptop with its webcam or external laptop. You'll often find they've got apps on their site specifically for adjusting the webcam that's built in. Other things like VLC, you can also open the webcam up in that. Its interface is a little clunky in that regards, but you can adjust the color temperature and exposure and what have you through there. But it actually reverts back to using a very old Windows webcam interface.
And the one we use on the Mac, the one I use on the Mac is webcam settings. You can use, there's also a manual camera. I found the webcam settings was a little bit, manual camera looks nicer and the webcam settings seem to work better for me. So next question.
Moving on to Katie B, who says, I have a friend that is starting to teach yoga in her home and potentially outside. She's just starting, so funds may be minimal. What would be the essentials? An independent mic, webcam, or could she use her phone with some kind of a rig on a tripod? And do we have any lighting suggestions for Katie's friend? Do you have the brands too, if possible?
So my sister-in-law does yoga on the web. So oddly enough, she uses, I believe she's using an iPhone, and she has a Rode Go with a Samsung 10T mic that feeds into that Rode Go that goes back into her. The Rode Go has some, has an attachment to go into the phone, and the phone's locked off. And I believe that she's using China balls, for some soft lighting. In a small room in the house, and she's been doing it now for I think 6 months. I'll try to see if I can find out an update from her, but I know that that's where she was in April, I believe. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, for indoors lighting, you can bounce around because you're going to move around, so you're not going to be in the same area all the time. Perhaps look, especially if you're using your phone, at one of the gimbals that implements auto tracking, so it will follow the subject around the room. Tip for working outside though, especially in public parks, take a friend. Just make sure there's somebody there looking over and making sure everything's okay so you don't get in trouble.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, again, I'm pitching these Facebook portals. Camera, microphone, speaker, $68 on the Black Friday deal. So let the user, if you're doing it in Zoom, let the user pick which angle that they want. So that's a pretty inexpensive camera and computer essentially, because it's coming into Zoom as its own view. So, and then it's even the little one has the tracker, so it's a 4K camera inside of there, and it's moving around and positioning the person in the frame. So,
that could be really interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting. The
for
tracker,
cheap, $68.
Yeah,
And they're good for Zoom.
I just want to confirm with you, I can use that camera on more than just Facebook, right? Guy?
Yeah.
Well, you can join Zoom.
You can use it
on Zoom. So there you go. Courtney and then Nikki.
That's the answer. Thank you.
Yeah, that was kind of my question too. Does it require a Facebook account to use? If you're using it
Facebook or WhatsApp is the other thing that you can use to enroll it, so you don't have to.
Also, then it basically has a little app ecosystem, and you can install the Zoom app if you want to do Zoom things. Am I correct about that, Guy?
That's correct. Yeah, and then it has the other popular web conferencing apps: BlueJeans, WebEx, and there's one more.
Skype, maybe.
You just saved my Thanksgiving. That is awesome.
Mickey.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, with say, the price of those Portal Minis, like, would it be a good idea to at least experiment with like maybe 2 or 3 of them, and do a multicam thing, and maybe just have one device unmuted, and the rest people can choose, like, I want to pin this angle, I want to pin this angle, like with that yoga.
The problem is that here's the only thing about it multicam you have to figure out is that the person watching theoretically is doing yoga, and so they're going to switching the camera might not be as fun. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Next question.
Okay, moving on to
and for folks raising your hand, try to raise it earlier. I'm going to start getting a little more tight about straggling raising hands, because otherwise what's happening recently is that we're starting to not get to all the questions because the questions, every question drags out because we keep on raising our hands. So raise them quickly. It doesn't mean you never should do that, but just know that I may start cutting things off. Like the first three I'm probably going to go to, and then after that you may cut you off. All right, next question.
Mike Burns from Spokane says, I've heard you guys talk about Ubic, W-A-D, a gazillion times. Ubiquity? Oh, ubiquity.
Ubiquity.
I didn't even parse that. I'm now seeing it in Best Buy, and I guess it's now mainstream. What exactly is it? Wi-Fi modem mesh system, maybe?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Ubiquity. Go to ui.com or ubnt.com. That's their old page. But yeah, they're the most, I guess, mainstream of all the enterprise grade networking hardware. It's definitely not as as deep as the, like, say, Cisco, but it's easy to set up. That's one of the big things with Ubiquity.
Yep, Stuart, and then Jason.
Querius, Wi-Fi modem mesh, yes, all of those. They make a whole range of products. And file under can't be unseen. The other pronunciation for it is Ubiquity.
Jason?
Ubiquity makes two different lines, Unify and the Ubiquity kind of Edge series, which is the more pro stuff. Do not confuse the two. It's kind of like, the ThinkPad and the IdeaPad are both from Lenovo, and one is kind of garbage and the other one is the greatest laptop ever.
Right. Yep. Next question.
And just if you're looking up on the internet, it's UBIQUITY, I believe. So that's how you, yeah. Anyway, Mike Burns of Spokane. I read the Final Cut Pro 10 forum thread that was pretty ugly. Poor Saw didn't back up his project. He was trash talking new Apple Silicon laptops. Is the honeymoon over?
I don't know what. Yeah.
I think somebody came on and said that he got a new one and nothing worked and it was all horrible and it was never going to fire and the whole M1 thing was going to crash down. It's the typical Apple does something new.
The problem is that an awful lot of people have tested it, but he's going the other direction from like every other report that's out there. So it would make me probably, you always throw away the highest score and the lowest score. And so I think, the people who say it's absolutely perfect, probably not. He's probably on the other end. Go ahead, Jason, and then we'll move on.
Never separate a fool from his opinions. You will be wasting your time.
Go ahead, Courtney, and then Mickey. No, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, with anything new and any new platform, like there's always like 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 or 1 in a million chances that someone will have a bad experience. So like me personally, like I don't want to be that 1 in 1,000. So I tend to be very cautious with this and wait a couple of months or a couple of years even. But you expect like negative. It's not, there will always be someone who will say something negative about a new platform.
Yep. Next question.
Okay. Mike Burns is finished. So we're moving on to Darren McLaren of Leeds in the UK. Any recommendations on a webcam with a zoom lens? I need to sight something 3 meters away for an office worker. It should be under 100 or $500 if possible.
Go ahead, Stuart.
There was the Mocos cameras, but if you look for the one with the zoom lens on it at the moment, not available. Not on Amazon, maybe from their website. They might have sold out.
Yeah, they. I think. Yeah, I don't know how you would. You have to manually do it, I guess. But the Mocos would be the one that would probably have the ability to do that. Go ahead, Chris Fenwick. You're still quiet.
One more button. I bought the Mocos. I thought it was pretty cool for a while, and then I moved my office from Sacramento down here to Emeryville. I can't get the thing to work again.
Oh, there you go.
Just
so the and again the Brio,
me, Chris.
The Brio and the Huddle cams can both zoom up to 2x. So they can, if you're doing a 1080p out, just know that you can zoom in on them. You can't zoom way in on them, but you can zoom in on them. Go ahead, Stuart.
I forgot the obvious simple solution. A USB HDMI input and use a camcorder.
Yeah, at $500, you probably could find a couple solutions in that realm that would work. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the Canon Vixia R80 or R800. You can get them sometimes around $179, around $200, and just use one of the. You can use one of the cheaper or more expensive USB to HDMI conversions. Plus, they all come with a little IR remote control, and they have 10-to-1 zooms, optical zooms, and autofocus. So you have all of those advantages over most webcams.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna bump out to my my production, so I'm gonna disappear. I'm gonna let you guys keep going. We're running a little low on questions, so please keep those going. But otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Have a good
Alex.
one. All right, see everybody. Have
a
good
good overnight.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the next question, I suppose, which comes from Tim Erskine in Cupertino. Do you think Zoom is going to kill the insert studio business? That's an interesting question. Okay, who wants to dive in? And for those of you who don't maybe know, insert studios are a thing that came out of really the interview industry, where a TV station was where you used to have to go to get an interview done with somebody with camera and lighting, the rest of that. And then in most towns in America, most large cities, they started popping up these little insert studios, which is just a simple little thing with a small studio, a good camera, a fast connection onto the network. And a lot of those remotes you see on the news shows where the host in Washington is talking to somebody in Pittsburgh will come out of a little insert studio like that. So it's kind of a purpose-built video portal in a different location. Anybody think Zoom is going to kill it? I don't think so real early. Courtney, what do you think?
I think there'll still be a place for it. I mean, the problem is the networks are now settling for have lowered the bar for what they'll accept these days because of the pandemic, and suddenly everyone overnight had to work from home, so they couldn't send there weren't enough insert studios or satellite packages that they could send out to somebody's house to do. So I think those rooms are probably going to still be doing okay, but they're probably not booked as heavily as they were before, because simply because of the pandemic, people don't want to go out of their house to an external facility to use it right now. That's
right. It's sometimes you just have to kill all the anomalies and make sure it works. And the insert studio industry was connected, and they understood how to get a solid line from Pittsburgh to Washington that had good video, good audio, and would not have Zoom problems along the way.
You don't have the latency. You have satellite or telco latency, which is 250 milliseconds up to 2 seconds, but you don't have the internet latency. Right. And it's the virus that's going to kill those rooms, not necessarily Zoom.
Yeah, probably. I think I probably agree with you. Okay, I don't see any other hands moving up, so let's continue on the things.
Grant's got a word.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What?
Grant.
Sorry, you can't see me.
Were you
Bill.
down there? I'm sorry, Grant. I didn't look in the corner. You're in.
I'm down under, am I?
Yes, you are very much down under. You're the lower left square in my Hollywood Squares array. I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that thinking of Zoom as just a transport or a connection is one thing. I think of Zoom as the connection with our audience, and when we have that, I would rather the talent, the hosts, be in the same sort of environment as the audience. I think it helps actually to translate better, and so I think we do everything to make it as best quality as we can. But I think it looks better. We sometimes do these things where we have the talent sitting on a panel, and then you have other people that are at home, and I think it just is disjointed. Whereas when everyone is the same and at home, I think there is this extra. There's not as big a disconnection between the audience and the hosts or the talent. I think it works really well. So I think it could kill it.
There you go. I think that's a fabulous perspective and one I hadn't considered as much. So yeah, this does, this is somebody on, and I think office hours is a little unusual. We keep hearing about this, and with the clients I have in the corporate world, I realize, they're always saying, wow, your shot looks so good and you have much more clarity than I do. And I keep forgetting that those of us on this panel have worked really hard for months and months now to kind of perfect our Zoom presence that we can project out to the world. In the corporate world, a lot of people still look just terrible and sound just terrible, But we now know from this experiment that it is quite possible to achieve almost a broadcast quality signal from your house. And so, Grant, I truly appreciate what you say, and I think I might be short-sighted about whether or not Zoom telepresence can give traditional broadcasting a run for its money in less time than I might have thought. So, thanks for sharing that. All right, let's hit answered there and move to Gabriel Elms from Malaysia again. I had issues balancing panelist audio calling in from Mimo Call. I'm considering using an aux output from Mimo Live into Audio Hijack to add compression and noise suppression, and then send it back into Mimo Live as an audio input. Any potential pitfalls, or would this be a good workflow? So we have a lot of audio expertise, decades and decades of it here in the panel today. So who has a thought about whether that might be good, bad, or indifferent as an approach? Oh, nobody's going to be brave and raise their hand.
But Brian's here.
I know Brian's here, but I didn't want to push him. He's just back. We'll scare him away.
Well, and I was gonna say this sounds exactly like a Mickey question to me. So, you know, he's the resident expert with these kinds of things. My problem is I don't know anything about memo call. So as soon as it said memo call, I was like, but I will give my 1 cent worth, which is just, you know, use noise suppression when you can't get rid of the noise any other way is, you know, one of those like key takeaways. Too often it's, you know, the person has the microphone 14 feet away from them, and then they want to use a noise suppressor to get rid of the noise. It's like, move the microphone closer. It's a simpler thing. And same with compression. You know, it's like, just be hesitant. I'm always hesitant to just reach for a digital solution if there is a analog, and what I really mean is just a physical solution to the problem. Get the microphone closer to the sound source, remove the background noise from the environment, headset mics, all the things that we do on here. So that's a very generalized answer, which is why I wanted Mickey to answer, because it probably would have been better.
But valuable nonetheless. And now I'm going to force Mickey to add his 2 cents. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, like processing, especially like noise suppression, you do not want to leave that by itself. It's not like a set it and forget it thing. It rarely is. There's some higher end solutions, especially Cedar, where you can leave it in learn mode and it will do a fairly decent job, but still you want to always have your hands essentially like the analog. Well, not an essentially you want someone who always has their hands on the faders and always listening out to things. Like, say for the Makana stream, like every 15-20 minutes, like I take off my earpiece and I listen to what I'm sending out, because there's like with a lot of processing, there's no set it and forget it thing with compression and all that. You really have to listen. So like, yeah, just to wrap it up, like compression can help. It's not gonna solve every single problem. And as Brian mentioned, like noise suppression is a band-aid. You want to fix the actual problem instead of like trying to, you know,
trying lipstick to fix on a pig is the old expression.
Exactly. Or yeah, polish a turd. Yeah. But yeah, the important thing is you actually use your ears and listen and do adjustments as you do your show.
Brian has another note for us. Go ahead.
It's just my experience for the last 4 or 5 months really taught me that, and it's so hard to do, but for so many of these things, when we're doing virtual events where we're bringing in panelists from their house who don't do this all the talent prep becomes more important than technology. It becomes more important to spend the time with the people to get the best that you can and the best sound that you can from each one of them. And that's not always possible. Like it's also the most difficult thing to do, because you're asking them to come in early or get on a call the day before or do all these different things. But my experience has been the best results that I've seen had much less to do with I've got a $40,000 console and 30 years of audio experience, and more to do with I've got a producer who spent an hour with this person yesterday to make their audio and video look and sound as good as it could possibly get before it ever got to me.
Yeah.
And then when it got to me, everything was at least in the general ballpark of usable, and then a little bit of compression, a little bit of, noise reduction, whatever helps. But if it's coming to you, just wildly different, throwing an electronic solution is unfortunately not going to solve it. It may make it a little better, but it's not really going to solve it.
And I will say, because I've mentioned this before, I do a lot of interview work with corporate executives, and we have one CEO of a financial institution her office is on the top floor right below the AC. So I always hire one of my favorite sound people to do that, because she has a cedar system, and we can get rid of the noise almost miraculously. But every time I'm editing with those tracks that started out really bad and have become way more than just acceptable, I can still hear the difference. It is processed in a way that doesn't sound it's not authentic, but I can just tell there's a difference. It's notching something out of there that otherwise would be in her voice if I had a clean environment to record her in. And I always feel a little bad about that, but I think it's the best compromise solution to get what we need, which is her talking to the public, because these are broadcast spots. And as long as her message is coming through clear, then I'll accept that is the best way I can do that. Okay, that's my 2 cents on it. Jeff Wesserman is our next question out of Oakland, California. Another power-related question. I misplaced 2 power supply adapters for a couple of older 18-volt lights, ProMaster, and I'm smiling because I've done the same thing. Any recommendations on how to get a replacements and what to look out for? Oh my gosh, Jeff Francis, good, save us.
You know the voltage, but is it DC volts or AC volts? First question. Second question, what's the current? How many amps? And what type of connector does it use? And is it positive in the center pin or is it negative in the center pin? Anything wrong about that and you could blow up your lights.
I wish I had all the hours I have spent trying to find power supply replacements on eBay or Craigslist or anywhere I could look to try to replace something from an oddball power supply for a light that I like, but somehow it stopped working. Let's do Mickey and then Courtney. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, excellent points from Jeff there. In terms of the current, the amperage, you can use a power supply that can supply a higher amperage than what the light needs, because the light will only draw the amount of current that it needs to do its job. And most of the information usually you can find on a sticker near the jack on the light itself.
Cool. Courtney?
Yeah, and one possible solution would be, because most laptop power supplies are 18 volts. 18 to 24. Most of them are 18. So if you look for, and most of them are, 3 to 5 amps. So look for a replacement laptop power supply. That might be your cheapest outfit. It'll be a little brick, and they usually come with a variety of adapters for the DC plugs on the outside, different diameters to try. That might be the best source of a replacement power supply. Reasonable.
Jeff?
So a show of hands on the panel, how many of you have a bin full of old power adapters that you save for just this reason?
I think we have 100% buy-in on this. That's amazing. Great instant poll, Jeff. All right. I think, so there you go. That's the best you can do to solve the problem once you lose the thing that you told yourself you shouldn't ever lose. Mojave to Catalina is the topic of the next one from Roger Hammond in Tucson. He's using screen sharing and messages. Audio from QuickTime video playback on a client's Mac is not there. Anybody have an idea what could be going wrong? So you've moved from Mojave to Catalina as an OS, I guess, and screen sharing somehow has stopped working. Is that what, Jason? Go ahead.
Yeah. Between Mojave and Catalina, they did quite a bit of turning the screws down. So it depends on the application that you're using, and it depends upon how far locked down the sharing settings are. I would look at the processes, and the security panel is your friend. Just start adding things to the security panel and then begin to take them away one by one and see where it falls off. But my guess is it's almost certainly that. Unlock the security panel and see what it asks you for.
Yeah, you're also dealing. Catalina was a pretty big update, having dumped all the 32-bit stuff, which was a big sea change. So if there were little utilities and stuff working in the back of things that somehow didn't make that transition, and QuickTime video playback is QuickTime is a bit of an old technology for Apple now. They kind of deprecated it. I mean, they still have a lot of hooks in AV Foundation and Core Video, but I don't think QuickTime itself, particularly the QuickTime app, is still fully supported. I might be wrong about that, but that's kind of what I remember. Moving on to Michael Vosbein of Woodstock, Georgia, says, is there any concern that we may look and sound so much better than the other people we're in Zoom meetings with? Sometimes I feel like I'm wearing a tux to a beer hall. That's a great metaphor. Go ahead, John Pewitt, address that, and then Jason, and then Guy.
One word, no. I have got nothing but positive comments about my looks. I work in a corporate IT environment though, so that could be a little different. The problem I seem to have is 95% of the people I'm in Zoom meeting with don't turn on a camera.
Yeah, we see a lot of that in the corporate stuff that I do too. Jason, go ahead.
Would Bobby Fischer let you win at chess because he was better at chess than you? No, you're in production. Act like it. There's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of which, I need to now drop out of here. Bye.
Bye, Jason. Good to see you today. We were going to Guy and Stuart, and then Jeff's in too. So let's do Guy, then Stuart, then Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah, in these church meetings, a lot of times I'll just turn off this blue light. So I'm going to turn it off if you can watch the background. And that kind of dumbs it down quite a bit just by flipping that off. And then I take my fill light and I turn that off too. So I just dumb down my lighting and blend in a little bit. So that's the trick there. But then the sound is so much more pronounced. Like I'll get asked to do the reads, so they'll ask me to read a verse, and because I got the teleprompter right here and I can read it, and it just sounds like super smooth with the DPA 4066, the mix pre noise assist. So I get volunteered, because otherwise somebody else opens up the mic and it's like.
I'm going to make a comment about in the corporate world. That's the equivalent of dressing a little nicer because you want a better job. I mean, sometimes you have better presentation, and the next thing you know, they are asking you to do more, and then you become known as the go-to person for that. And the next thing, you're coming out of the pool of folks at your same level, and you're moving to the next level. Why? Because you have shown up and done a better job over the course of time. So it's kind of how it works sometimes. Stuart, go ahead, and then John Pewitt will come back to you.
Class it as advertising the same way you would with what you take pride in on your showreel or on your resume. This is our way of advertising our skills, and even if people want them for free, don't let them have it. Charge for it if you can.
And finishing off with John Pewitt, go ahead.
Yeah, whenever COVID first happened, my CISO reached out to me and wanted me to help him look better on a presentation he was doing. And we ended up with a Blue Yeti mic for him at the time because I hadn't joined this, but I still had a better presentation than anybody else on my team. So by looking better, sounding better, you're going to get more opportunities. Just echo what Bill had to say.
Yeah, I've seen an uptick in some work. Like, in fact, I think our second video we made after COVID shut us down was for one of the large corporate things that have offices all over the country, and they wanted a video on how to look better at Zoom. Would they have asked us to do that if we hadn't ourselves demonstrated that we could look better on Zoom than other people? I don't think so. So it was a pure money-making play. Jeff, go ahead, Francis.
I'm going to quote an old musical: "You're never fully dressed without a smile." So when they say how good you are, be gracious and help them raise their game.
I absolutely agree with that sentiment 100%. Second to the last question, unless other things come in, comes from Brian from Savannah, Georgia. Now that I'm back in the saddle, so to speak, I've noticed how uncomfortable my saddle actually is. He wants recommendations on a good office chair. Oh, this is another religious discussion. Jet Sky's holding up his seated donut, and we're going to get into should we do this by less expensive versus insane, because office chairs can get pricey if you get into the esoteric. stuff. Let's go with John Pruitt because you have your hand up, and then we can
Yeah.
add it.
So I use a gaming chair, as people can see. It was about a $200 gaming chair. I really heartily recommend that type of stuff, mainly because, number one, they can be reasonably priced. They can also get kind of insane. I've seen them for $1,000. But they're also designed for people that may weigh a lot and may sit a lot. So I also need back support, and gaming chairs have excellent back support. So if you're looking for a budget option for around $200, if that's truly budget, then I would say a gaming chair is a really good option. Plus, it also has footrest built into it. So I'm sitting here with my legs propped up throughout the entire panel.
Fair enough. Stuart, go ahead.
Following on just from what John said about budgets and seats that can actually handle a load, this all sounds strange for a whole heap of reasons, but don't be afraid to go to a car wreckers and find a decent driver's seat that can be adjusted backward and forward, tilted, and have lumbar support. That's kind of essential if you're going to be sitting there for long, to keep your spine in a good position, especially if you have to carry a camera on it on a gig when you get up. But yeah, you can pick them up reasonably cheap, and you can always put them on a decent base as long as you take the time to think about how you're bolting it down.
Let's do Sky's hand. The Sky is off camera, but his hand is fully on camera. So
well,
and then
I'm doing
Kev
the,
after that.
the Vanna White is the Aeron chair, which again, Courtney would recognize because it was very popular in many productions facilities in Los Angeles. But it allows you to breathe and your body to breathe. But I did add the cushion donut, and it's just a nice option. It is not the least expensive option, but I did get this one used, and there are many office buildings that are constantly changing out, and so you can find them. And it got shipped to me from like Minneapolis or something, so it was a used one, and it's been working great for me until it doesn't, and then I fall over backwards.
Kev Brewer and then John Preto.
Just if you want to look around for a range, don't forget the office auction sites at this time. You may well find some very high-end chairs there for a very low price, and there's a lot of them going on, obviously, at the moment. It's worth a look.
Absolutely. John Preto?
I've been sitting in the Aeron chairs. I've got 2 of them here, but I got a great solution for you, Brian. Go talk to Chris Fenwick. They just shut down their office, and they've got Herman Miller chairs, not the Aerons, but one of the other similar lines, and I think they were giving them away.
Ooh, well, that's the price you can't beat. Guy, what did you want to weigh in?
In addition to the Herman Miller, I found one of those offices that were going out and picked up like 15 of these turnstone buoy chairs, and they're great for just kind of moving around, and they go up and down, but they help strengthen your core. And I've noticed just a better feel in my back switching to this every once in a while. So I alternate throughout the day.
So my Aeron, which I've had for now going on, I think 20 years, was the result of a Christmas present from my brother-in-law, and they'd had a really good year in his business a year before. So he said, I'm buying you an office chair. Do not get it used. Do not go directly to an office supply retailer, and I don't care what you spend. You have like a $5,000 budget if you want to. And so I went into the big office supply store, and I tried 3 or 4. And so I ordered a bespoke, correct size, correct model, and Aeron chairs, there are various models with various things. And the result of that, I would not have spent this kind of money myself. I think this chair cost $1,200 or something like that at retail, maybe a little bit more than that. But that was the last week in my life I thought about chairs. And it has been incredibly rock solid for me. So I figure I've gotten 20 years out of that much of a spend. Again, I probably wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been a gift. But it really was a gift because it took that whole topic out of my life for 25 years or so. And I think that's a pretty good investment. Chairs are important, is what I'm trying to say in a very long-winded way. So So let's knock that one out. We do have a couple more things in, but we're going right now to Trevor Walker in Rosamond, California, who said on a $1,000 to $2,000 lens area, what are folks' thoughts on UV filters to protect the lens? Who has a raised hand? Stuart is showing us probably an A1 Sky or polarizer or something that he puts in
that's a
front.
UV filter that came off of a lens that I was using today. They're great for protecting a lens when you're going outdoors, or just because some people do silly things. Yes, we call them idiot filters because they stop the idiots from damaging the glass element on the front of the real lens. The more expensive your lens gets, the more likely you are to want to protect it. But do clean both the front element of the lens and the back side of the filter before you screw it on, because you will forget it's there and you will go to clean dust off the front of the lens, and guess what? It's not on the front element of the filter, it's on the lens you forgot to clean.
Okay, John Pruitt.
Yeah, I do photography pretty, amateur but serious. I don't like using UV filters in front of mine. I always use the lens hood instead to keep things from getting into the lens. And the reason why is I don't want to use a cheaper piece of glass when I'm paid $1,200, $1,500 for a lens.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put even $100 piece of glass in front of a $1,500 lens unless it's got a practical purpose other than protecting the lens.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, you've got UV, you've got 1A Sky filters. They're things that were designed for, and then you would think that optically clear glass, which, on Panavision cameras, they're putting those drop-in filters. So they obviously have completely transmissive glass in the lens creation technology things. I like to keep something on, but that's in part because I worked in Arizona for many years, and we would get these things called dust storms. And the last thing you want to do is be out in a dust storm that comes through with an exposed lens. That is very bad juju. So, let's move on to Courtney, and then Stuart and Guy and John. So Courtney first.
Fine for protecting the lens in daylight shooting. I'd take it off if you're going to shooting at night. If you have any kind of specular or point source lights, you're going to cause some lens reflections off the backside of that UV filter that you might not want to see. So, and you don't need it at night anyway for UV, skylight filtration. But just to protect it during the daytime, it's fine.
Stuart?
Just a note on these versus lens hoods. The lens hood goes on the outside of this, but it's there especially if you're filming, say, outdoor sports and a motorbike goes past and tosses stones up. Would you prefer that to break, or the front element of a Zeiss or a Cook Prime or something you can't replace easily? I'd prefer to break the filter.
Let's do John and Guy to finish up. John?
I shoot different things where I'm not going to have rocks shooting up at me, so that is a practical reason. I tend to shoot either water or wildlife or models, so those aren't normally throwing rocks at me. Models on occasion, but that's my fault. But the other thing is, remember that a lot of the in the newer cameras, anything digital and still photography. Don't know about video. They've got a lot of these filters built into the sensor, so you don't really need the UV for protection of or filtering the lens out. You're using it mainly for the. Stuart's nodding his head wrong. My information may be
Optical
wrong.
low pass filter and infrared cut are built onto the sensors, not UV.
Okay, good to know. I was missing.
No, and I will say the old cameras that we used to use usually had like the Sony Betacams and things like that had neutral density filters that were inside. You could rotate them in if you got into bright shooting conditions. And so there must have been some optically clear thing that would pass at least the resolution of those older cameras. Now, we are getting much higher resolution these days, so that may be a suspect approach. And in fact, I don't see that anymore on the Reds or anything else. I think everybody has gone to external filtering. But Guy was next, and Guy had something to say on that.
Yeah, the one that I keep on all our lenses is the Tiffin Digital Ultra Clear. It's got the whitewater glass, and it's spectacular. It's a nice, clean image. The other one that I keep handy is the circular polarizer, and that one's going to knock down your exposure. I think it's about a half stop, so that's one I don't leave on all the time, but I find myself reaching for it because it's a handy one to take out reflections.
Yeah,
But
camera
definitely
bag
keep one on
filters.
all the time. I've seen some nasty stuff happen to expensive glass.
You don't want that. Sending it back to Canon or Cook or somebody to get the front element replaced is not cheap or easy, and it takes a good little bit of time. All right, I think we covered that. So we're now Benjamin Adaput of San Carlos, California. Says thoughts on a shotgun mic versus a headset mic for video calls. I'm hoping for something under $100, but I may be persuadable. Note, he has a Sony WH-1000 XM4, but he's a bit afraid to join office hours with an integrated headphones mic. First and foremost, never be afraid to join office hours. Give it a try. I know it can be what's the right word for it? Scary. Because you think
intimidating.
Yeah, I think all of those words, but that's you. I will say this: somebody told me one of the most valuable things I ever learned in my life, which was I was having a tough time sending out work for people to judge, and he just said to me, "Look, nobody who's gotten good at anything in life has ever done that without exposing their work to somebody else for criticism. It is difficult. It is hard because you feel like they're criticizing you as a human being rather than the work. But if you can't get past that hurdle and expose and take feedback, you're never going to advance as fast as you will if you do the work and expose it to the world. So that's really what these ruthless reviews are. You got to get past that. Courtney, then John, go ahead.
Back to the difference between a shotgun mic. A good shotgun mic's probably going to be more than $100, but it will allow you to keep the mic out of the shot if that's something you want to do. If you want a clean frame, you can use a shotgun mic versus a headset type microphone, and you can get good sound out of it. Just be forewarned that if you turn your head off, you're going to go off mic. So you have to really stay in the sweet spot of the microphone to be heard all the time, and if you're moving around, it's not quite as good a solution. Other than that, the Rode NT series shotguns, a lot of people use them, and I've heard a lot of people use them just out of frame, usually either just above or just below the frame. I like to go below, but I think it's a good solution as long as you're staying in one spot.
John Pruitt, then Mickey.
Yeah, I'm using the Alex recommended Pulson microphone. It's like $20. I think with the entire hardware setup I have here on the panel is $60 today. I've got monitor earbuds that are like $30, and then I've got an adapter to take the Pulson microphone into my computer. That was another $10. So if you want to go in here, it is not expensive to join this panel. It can be. I've also got, this $300 microphone that I bring in, that is nice, but Alex seems to prefer this. And then as it was mentioned by Courtney, I don't go off mic now. I don't go off axis, and it's a lot easier to do the mic checks with Mickey this way, as yesterday proves.
Mickey and then Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, I personally would rather go with a cardioid or a hypercardioid instead of a shotgun when using it indoors, because there is shotguns tend to sound a little thinner indoors due to their interference tube design. But between the two shotgun mics versus headset mics, I like the sound of shotguns more because they feel more natural. But of course, they are less forgiving in terms of the room that you're in, like the background noise, and also what do you call this, the reflections within the room. So between the two, if you have a good room, then I would stick with the shotgun. But of course, and also keep in mind the proximity effect that the directionality of the mic that Courtney mentioned. But yeah, Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I like the sound
Okay.
of shotguns more.
Yeah, let's keep moving on. So we're almost at 9 o'clock at the top of the hour here. Stuart, go ahead, and then Guy, real quick, and then we'll try to knock out this last question.
Yeah, just on the cost barrier to joining in, don't be worried about it. That's a $79 Australian microphone that I picked up at a local electronics store, and that's a camera that cost me $500 about 10 years ago. That's a 3-chip JVC camera, and the image looks good enough to pass ruthless reviews with certain critiques.
Okay,
so
Guy?
Get into it and have a go.
Yeah, from what I remember over the weekend, Benjamin's a 18-year-old high school kid. So Benjamin, reach out to me on Discord and I will send you a free Countryman headset mic, and would love to see you on the panel. So
Score. This is the community. Thank you.
Take him up on it, Benjamin. That's a great mic.
And Benjamin may end up being a professional just because Guy in his heart opened up and helped him get excited about doing this, and then come to the panel.
Yes, we expect to see you here.
Yeah, that's the downside. You know, that's the return for Guy's generosity. All right. Do we have? No, we're already at 9 o'clock. Well, Roger Miles just quickly asked, is the Zoom Room license required to use a Facebook Portal Mini? Guy, I think not, right? If you buy the Portal you're on, or...
That's correct. You do not need a license for the Portal Mini. You just fire it up and connect your account, and it shows up as a collaboration device. It's not... what's Fenwick doing? My
Whoever's
name is...
switching the show should switch to Spotlight Fenwick, because Fenwick is begging.
No, his name. You got to see his name.
My name is Benjamin. Please send Mike. He's trying to divert Benjamin's mic to himself. That's not going to work. Fenwick, I'm sorry. All right. Thank you all for coming today. We truly appreciate you being a part of Office Hours. Alex will be back tomorrow morning, as always, 6 a.m. And we may do a few ruthless reviews. Who knows? Thanks, everybody.